Let's talk New Orleans. Let's talk that whole situation. I am furious. I woke up this morning to this absolutely horrific situation. And I was just like, oh, what the hell, another one? And immediately bombarded with how this was a migrant. Immediately, right? Immediately bombarded with how this was a migrant. And it was just like, come on, you guys can't even wait 20 minutes. 20 minutes before the Republicans decide that they're going to find a way to weaponize another tragedy because that's all they know how to do. How do we blame this on the Democrats? And they do it all the time, right? They did it with Rittenhouse. Well, the guy threw a Molotov cocktail at him. It was fake, completely made up. They did it with, every time that the 70 people during the George Floyd protest drove through crowds. Well, they were in the road every single time, regardless of whether or not they were convicted. Every single time they would do that. They would find a justification. They were trying to take over the car. They did it with Donald Trump, right? Oh, they were Democrats. That turned out not to be true with the two people that tried the attempts on him. They do this all the time. And it's sickening. And when it's
January 6th.
And January 6th, they blame the Democrats. What I find most crazy about this entire situation is almost exclusively the violence in this country is left wing. It's a rarity.
Right wing.
Right wing. I meant to leads me to the next point. It's a rarity that it's left wing. And when it is left wing, you have to be like, oh, God, they're going to run with it. If it's another right wing violence, we're just accustomed to it. We just become conditioned. But the story is that this guy drove through a crowd. He had an ISIS flag on his car. It was unknown at the time. Republicans were taking stabs in the dark because there was a part of a character exposed on the flag. And so they surmised, ironically enough, rightfully so, very, very, even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while, that it was ISIS. Interestingly enough, when I woke up and saw it, that's what I thought. I thought it was ISIS. And I didn't think it was a right-wing plot. It's like, it doesn't really follow the trajectory. It's very clearly not left-wing, and it's 3:15 in the morning. And, it's almost it's incredibly likely. That matches up with the type of attacks that they do across the globe. And we saw Republicans immediately jump to calling this person a immigrant. Person's not. They are a 42-year-old Army vet, or were. They were unalived at the scene. A 42-year-old Army vet that... U.S. born from Beaumont, Texas, in a republic. And then I've watched as they've tried to say, well, it was in a Democratic city. The guy came from a Republican city, in a Republican county, in a Republican state, in a white pickup truck, and ran over. At this point, 15 people have been killed, and that number, I imagine, is probably going to go up. We'll see. It has been going up throughout the day, and they try and blame it on the on the left here. And it got so profoundly pathetic that they tried to say that Joe Biden's tweet, Joe Biden's tweet this morning was insensitive because he said Happy New Year's. He said this 3 hours before the attack. He said it around midnight. The attack happened at 3:15 in the morning. And Republicans don't care. They just want to blame Biden because they have Biden derangement syndrome and immigrant derangement syndrome. And none of them, not a single one, talked about what Donald Trump said this morning. No one talked about it. So, which was
nothing but deranged.
It's not only, it's deranged, it's disturbed, it's disgusting, and it's so unbelievably insensitive. And not only that, categorically wrong. He said, this is what he said this morning, first thing. Right? As I'm sent this, by the way, and I'm like, oh my God. This is Trump's quote. When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media. Now who's publishing the fake news? But it turned out to be true. It actually wasn't. So that was a lie. The crime rate in our country is at a level nobody has ever seen before. Again, not caused by migrants. Migrants commit less crime. I have to fact check our president in real time because every sentence is a lie. That's pretty crazy. And no, we have seen crime rates higher than this. Our hearts are with the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. So he has to start off every condolence, every single one of them, by attacking someone. Because why wouldn't he? I'm really just tired of turning on the news and Republicans automatically trying to blame Democrats for this. I could easily. Here's the thing that's like really, profound about it. I could easily make this that it's Republicans' fault, that it's right wing violence, and it is.
It'd be easier.
It would be easier. It is right wing violence. ISIS is a religious, fundamentalist, extremist terrorist organization. They share
Don't they
more
always
in
say that the
common.
military skews right?
I know, right? They share more in common with the American right than any other group in this country. Period. Except for maybe like schmazzies. And that's a fact. And if I really wanted to get political about it, this was a Republican, a guy from a Republican city in a Republican area or county in a Republican state driving a white pickup truck through a crowd 2 weeks ago in Leavenworth, Washington. Another guy from Texas drove through the Central Park there, which I was just in Leavenworth. It's a beautiful city. If you ever get a chance to come to Washington, definitely go there. And he just started doing donuts in it from Texas. That would be not only irresponsible for me to say, it would just be me trying to score political points, which is what Republicans are trying to do. And interestingly enough, I did have about 5 or 6 years ago my first ever interaction with a white pickup truck from Texas. And he was an absolute asshole. I just tried to pull off the road and this guy went haywire. He's behind me. I just tried to pull off the road. Literally all I did. Blinker on, everything. So I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing there. I mean, they blame everybody else for their culture, for it being cultural. So why can't I just blame it for being Texas being a cultural? White pickup truck equals bad news. But no, it's disgusting because every time you turn on the news now, you can automatically assume that Republicans are going to try and find a way to weaponize it. Did they ever come out and admit they were wrong? No. No,
Nope.
no, they don't. Never. This is a tragic situation, and I can't imagine if I was a family member of one of these victims or someone that cared about one of these victims and turning on the news and watching Republicans try and turn this, right? They try and turn it. It's despicable, and we see it all the time. We see it literally. I mean, like, even you remember when Trump was shot at the first time? I was in the mountains. I didn't have service. You messaged me, and then I had like a tiny bit of service. I was right outside of Mount Rainier, and I was on a giant cliff, and I just had a dash of service, just enough to call Jaden. And I was already the whole ride down the mountain, right? Because I was up there for about another 5 or 6 hours. The whole ride down the mountain, I was like, when I hit service, I already know they're going to blame the Democrats. I already know this is going to happen. When I turn on the news this morning, I already know they're going to do it. I already know. And it's a relentless, this fanatical belief in trying to blame everybody for everything so you can score political points. It's sick. It's absolutely sick.
It's very reactionary.
And they do it all the time. They do it no matter what. Nobody has any want to find out what actually happened. They just want to throw their own political ideology into it immediately. And it backfires all the time, right? The Uvalde shooter, the El Paso shooter. These are people that they've tried.
They'll claim they're trans or Democrats.
Right.
Yes.
They frequently try and do that. So that's a situation. I will update you guys when we know more. But this weaponization of literally every tragedy has to stop, because it happened with the guy that drove through the crowd in Wisconsin too, where they tried to blame the left for that because he supported Black Lives Matter, not because he was running from the police. Which also, by the way, there's another story that was in the news. There's actually two more stories in the news. One was that there was a Cybertruck that went off in Las Vegas. I don't know, there's fireworks in it.
Right next to Trump Tower.
Right next to Trump Tower. Don't know what that's about. I believe the FBI came out and said it wasn't a terrorist attack. The only person that was killed in the incident was the actual driver, the person that rented the Tesla from Turo. So there's that. Also, there was in Virginia, nobody on the right wants to cover this, by the way. There was a farm, and this is all related to, in a weird roundabout way. There was a farm, a guy, he was stockpiling explosives. And not only was he
about
stockpiling
150 bombs.
Right. And he was also he had like hashtag No Lives Matter. He was like a far right anti-government extremist, which is a contradiction, by the way. But that's something that exists on the left. So kind of an interesting
He was using
contradiction.
pictures of Biden as target practice.
Yeah. And do they talk about that? No.
Nope.
Do they talk about? We talked about it on here the other day. There was the woman that was killed by the immigrant on the train in New York a week or so ago. Around the same time, day or two before or after, a U.S. citizen burned someone alive in North Carolina. Does that make national news? No. No, instead you have Fox News that immediately comes out and says that the guy that did this attack in New Orleans came through Eagle Pass, Texas 2 days ago. How do you have any credibility? You just have guys jumping the gun. I watched a former FBI agent, I screenshot it so they can't delete the post, come out and say, well, we should probably say that it has to do with the U.S. open border policy. It's full-blown immigrant derangement syndrome. It's endless. Endless. It's just incessant blame the left for everything, despite the fact that right-wing extremism in America is the predominant. And I'm tired of it. I really am.